Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Norland news video. After the previous roadmap, it seemed that the developers may be cooking up some huge changes. That was proven today when they dropped the new update in the beta branch, which they gave a very fitting name. A damn big update. Naturally, we have to talk about this, as it is a complete shift of the status quo we've been used to essentially since the game was first released. But before we get started, if you like this video or my other gameplay videos, please consider leaving a like, as well as hitting the subscribe button. Over the last month, about 90% of our viewers are those who are not currently subscribed. If even 10% of those subscribe today, it would easily get us over the 1,000 subscriber mark, which would be incredible. As usual, I will be putting a link in the description to this update on Steam if you'd like to read along with me. With that out of the way, let's discuss the damn big update in the Norland beta branch. The first shift in the typical gameplay loop is how instructions work. Previously, you would place a lord on individual buildings and they would receive instructions this way. This was originally added to connect the lord management to the city building aspects of the game, but introduced a lot of micromanagement as well. Now you can place your lord on the hall and distribute instructions to the servants that will in turn instruct the necessary buildings. Migration has also been changed and now is directly tied to how happy peasants are during the day. Sad peasants mean people will start to desert, happy peasants mean a few new migrants, and very happy peasants mean even more migrants. To combat populations booming too much too early, the hope for future positive thought was reduced and a negative thought for large population was added. In the future, we can expect more factors such as diseases to play a part in this as well. This gives a lot more control over migration, whereas forcing it through war became the only real means of expanding your population in the mid and late game before. Crime has received a number of changes as well. Criminals caught by patrols will now surrender instead of fighting to the death. They will then be tied up and made into prisoners. This system opens up an incredible new way to utilize punishment, for entertainment. Yes, you can now execute prisoners to the excitement of your adoring peasant spectators. Additionally, the scaffold has been changed in several key ways. You can now choose to have criminals, prisoners, fanatics, or even indiscriminately use the populace as fodder for executions if you wish. The interface itself has also received a nice redesign, which feels a lot more consistent with other interfaces in the game. Fatigue from a lack of alcohol consumption has been removed entirely, instead only improving mood to help with future migration. Morning church service is no longer mandatory, and player-appointed sermons take place in the evenings. Sermons of Doubt to create agnostics now requires a new knowledge. The character screen has received a redesign similar to the scaffold. Not only does it feel more organized in general, but there is less of a need to hover over things that you need constantly in gameplay such as mood. Finally, Character Needs tab has been removed entirely. Instead, the important bits from there will be shown on the main tab instead, and only matter if the need is strong. Next we have combat-based updates, and a big one being the ability for attacks to come from any direction of the map rather than always coming from the west. Enemies can also come from different directions at once, making city defense more dynamic and interesting. As a foil to the new walls, there are now different types of bandits called ragged bands. These don't have much in the way of armor or weaponry, but what they do have is growing numbers. They aim to cause problems, but not necessarily to kill nobility. Instead, they'll raid homes, abduct peasants, or burn buildings. In short, they add a sense of chaos when they arrive. There will be no warning for them, which may be the main criticism, especially for new players. Either way, this will increase the need for a dedicated garrison for defense, as sending your whole army away could be rather risky. Other provinces have had their armies weakened, and ambitious kings' armies have also been given a cap, except in hardcore mode, to help balance these changes. Regular peasants can now be recruited to the army, and all recruits now require payment before hiring based on combat skill, just like mercenaries. A major update wouldn't be complete without diplomacy improvements, and this one is no different. Now you can burn vassals of other kingdoms, which was apparently a bug before. Peace treaties no longer prevent dark deeds, so you can oppose a stronger foe by making peace and scheming against them. For hunting with lords on the global map, wolves will be level 10 and there won't be forced conversations, hopefully decreasing the amount of unexpected failures. You can also see the exact success probability, which is dependent on combat skill. When puppets were first added, they would only happen through game logic and didn't have any player agency attached. That has been fixed, since you now have access to a make puppet option in the action menu in the social tree. At least 90 relation is required, or 50 for children. You will need to consider this when accepting brides from other cities, as they could be the child of a king and be a puppet acting against you. Or you could plant a puppet in an enemy city. The new buffs to Intrigue systems don't stop there though, as you can now use seduction as a tool for political purposes. The king is now in direct charge of seduction orders, so the seduced target could lose loyalty with their ruler and gain relation with yours. This makes seduction a useful tool in acquiring puppets. Finally, the interest mechanic has been modified to be more accessible so you can more readily use seduction to your advantage. This should make the persuasion skill more useful in general. There were also issues with guests being given their proper roles, which should now be fixed. Scheme-based roles should appear much more now. Additionally, parents of brides you've brought into your family from other cities will occasionally visit you. Several balance changes were also added, including doubling the tree growth time, removing fertility penalties but giving a 20% yield bonus for fields on fertile ground, production speed being slowed across most production buildings, and level 4 and 5 buildings being removed completely. Finally, the developer notes changes to the soundtrack, game effects, trees on local maps, and acknowledge often reported issues with memory leaks and crashes, which should be fixed soon. That was a lot, which is why I decided to reserve my usual critiques of each update until here at the end. Overall, this is a great update which throws out a lot of what we're used to, but in a good way. In particular, I love what they've done with crime and making it into a spectacle that your populace and ruler both feel deeply involved in. The lack of micromanagement with instructions will be nice, but the main downside I can see for this is not being able to split management between multiple lords. One lord is all that can be placed on the hall at a time, so there is essentially one manager for your entire city. It also removes the need for a chancellery, which I have mixed feelings about. On one hand, lords without the management talent are no longer really needed, since anyone can manage the hall and not use paper to instruct everything efficiently. The trade-off here is that one of the last remaining useful traits feels essentially useless now. If the chancellery is only there for late developed cities that can't be managed by the 3 hall servants, you will likely already have the paper needed to run it anyways. On the other hand, your manager seems to have far more time on their hands since instruction time appears to have not changed at all and is only needed on the one building. This means that production is pretty much automatic now, so hopefully the developers have future plans to at least make production a little more hands-on in some other ways. If not, production has essentially been removed as something the player really has to concern themselves with. Personally, I also think there should be at least a 1-day warning for any ragged band attacks, or at least advanced warning if you have defensive towers. Otherwise, the status quo changes here all seem great, and now I mainly want to see deeper diplomacy mechanics and the removal of things such as church tax and rings as mechanics and replaced with something a little more mindful. So that is about it for this update video. I'm still hoping we will get even deeper political mechanics in the near future, since I still feel the intrigue and diplomacy systems need more work to make non-warfare based playthroughs more interesting. Either way, that's going to be it for me in this one. Just a quick reminder that there is a link in the description for this beta update. They are always great reads, as the developers and designers always communicate their general feelings in them beyond just putting down the patch notes. On a final note, tell me your thoughts about this update in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Still waiting for army garrisons.